Hi and welcome to the first of the Guildford.Games in collaboration with Liquid Crimson podcast type things. I'm still coming up with a name, can you tell? I'm joined by Huda from the ACM. I'm really very excited to have a chance to sit down and talk. Hi Huda.
Hello. Hi Lauran.
So, before we get started, why don't you just give us a little rundown of who you are and what you do currently?
Sure. So I'm a games tutor. I specialize in programming and business here at ACM. And I teach games at degree level, but also set up the diploma last year. So I'm teaching on both degree and diploma now.
That's cool.
And everything from, the theoretical part of games, not necessarily just game design, but the culture aspect of it and the business side of it, but then also the practical side, which is programming mainly on my end.
Awesome. I have to say that before I even knew that Guildford.Games were a thing, before I even knew that working in games was a thing, the ACM was my number one place to end up at some point in my life. So I think this is almost the closest I've ever been to actually being a part of the ACM. So thank you so much for
You're always welcome to come here.
I will. You'll never get rid of me. I think I visited once and just absolutely fell in love with it when I was a
just
teenager.
come over.
So cool. Right. Well, next week I'll be there. Great. See you Monday. So let's start with when I was doing my own podcast, I quite often kicked the conversation off with your most memorable or earliest gaming experience. So what would you say that would be?
Yeah. So earliest, to be controversial here, Mortal Kombat, one of my earliest games. Let's see, there was a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. And of course, as I moved into like more PlayStation 1 specifically, that was my favorite console. Wipeout, remember those?
Love those games.
Yeah. So the futuristic racing, kind of like Star Wars kind of racing game, and that was amazing. And I still play it. Still have the CD playing it on PlayStation 2 because there was a time when platforms or consoles were backwards compatible. So
I remember those days.
Good old days.
It's so interesting that there's quite often a game that is so important to us, when we kind of started out playing video games or becoming aware of video games, that we still have the physical copy. For me, it's Pokemon Yellow. I can see it from where I'm sitting right now. My Game Boy is never far away, OG. Just because there's, sure, emulators fine, but there's nothing like just sitting down with the original console and game and having a play. Yeah, it really makes a difference. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Right about that.
And Mortal Kombat, what a place to start. That's that's hardcore. I like it.
I'm not sure if it was a good start, to be honest. It's mainly because of my older siblings. They're playing video games, and I was just grabbing whatever they were playing and played it. Back in the days, the rating system wasn't much of a thing, so nobody was aware of what they were doing really. So Mortal Kombat, it was.
And there's nothing wrong with that, really. I mean, as long as the thing with Mortal Kombat is, even nowadays when I sit down and play it, which I do still do, it's a very easy game to just pick up and have a bit of a romp through, I guess. But you almost have to detach yourself from what you're seeing, right?
That's the thing. Yeah. And for a 4 or 5 year old that was very easy.
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Exactly, but it wasn't very relatable in that sense. It was just sticks.
It was just fun. It
was just fun. Yeah, I didn't really understand what was happening in that sense, but it was fun. We laughed a bit and we moved on.
The best way. Let's do it right now. So how did you come to be in game development for your career? What was your kind of journey through to where you are now?
Right. Okay. So it wasn't really as intentional as, for many people. They're like, I played games my whole life and I want to get into the game industry and all that stuff. So for me, I've always played games. Come from a family where we all are gamers. My parents were gamers before I was even born, playing all those arcade games in the 70s and 80s. So I guess that's how it started. But I never even knew that you could study as a games developer until my brother just said, you know what, let's study this together. I'm like, really? I mean, we keep playing games together, but I didn't even know that you could study it and make a career out of it. So that's pretty much how I got into it. And at first it was disastrous for me because I had no idea what you could do with it. I wanted to be something, I wanted to change the world, you know what I mean? So I wanted to take my life seriously. I wanted to become a physician or an astronomer or a paleontologist. And then I became a game developer. I'm like, what? I started studying this. How can I like cancel with this? How can I do that? But then after term one, I started to realize there's much more to it, especially as I was introduced into, for instance, games programming. That's when I really clicked with it. It was amazing, like all kinds of logics and the process of making something interactive, making it come to life. That really amazed me, and I could see the potential of video games it wasn't, you always start with, okay, it's just passing time, or we're just killing time, as we say. It could be so much more than that, and so much deeper than that. And I stayed, and that's how I became a games developer.
I love that. I love that story because I think there are so many of us of my kind of generation that had no idea, absolutely no idea. You kind of view video games the same way that you'd view film or television, but just so much smaller, music even, but such a smaller kind of world. And you almost couldn't begin to imagine how you could end up doing this for a career. And, from my perspective, it's literally because Guildford was on my doorstep that I've ended up working in video games. Had it been another 20 miles away, I may not have made it. No, right. So actually just finding out that it's a thing and running at it, I absolutely love that. And as far as changing the world, it's definitely still possible, without a doubt. I mean, we're in a space, especially now, where the world is such a confusing place and so scary, and news can be, just overwhelming, that video games have become such an important way for people to take a step back, to relax, to be able to, just kind of switch off for a bit and do something else.
Yeah, definitely.
The amount of
but also, it's not just for entertainment. You can actually take on those world conflicts, be part of the solution. So you can do it in so many ways.
You're absolutely right. And pulling it back into the Guildford theme, with games like Dreams from Media Molecule, for example, having kids sit down with a controller in their hands, doing something that's traditionally been viewed as killing time, as just a pastime, as you say, and now being able to actually imagine and create their own worlds and their own characters and their own levels, and see the possibilities that are within that. It's all changing. How did you find being on your course when you went to study games, being a female programmer? Were you outnumbered? Dare I?
Oh my god. I think when we started, so this was like ages ago, I think we started with 120 or 130 students. And we were 9 or 10 female students. Yeah, so that was daunting. I come from a background, so my family, as I said, we're mostly females, and the whole family plays. So I had no idea, the game industry was like that until I started university, and it was a shock for me, where is everyone?
Where are the ladies?
Yeah, exactly. Where is everyone? You can see the ladies grouping together at some point, just okay, we need to survive this. But it's finishing diploma level and then starting a big life university. It's very daunting. So, and then someone looking like me, that was just yeah.
Let's make it a little bit more daunting. Yeah, keep it rolling. Exactly.
So yeah, it was really weird. But at the same time, I think it was very few people who actually graduated, and I think a lot of people don't take games seriously, even as they are studying games. They don't realize that it's actually serious business we're doing here. Absolutely. So we ended up few graduating, and many of them were actually female students.
I love that. And I love bucking that trend in the first instance. Female programming is such it's you're a unicorn essentially. I mean there are a few of you
like that. Yeah, no, I don't see it because my mom was a maths teacher. She had a master's degree in mathematics, so for me it's like it was a way for me to connect with her. I didn't know the games industry was like male dominated. I had no idea programming was male dominated industry. I just got into it because I liked it. And then all these things I learned in university as I was studying. It's like I kept asking, but where are the girls? I have a cousin in the Middle East who was doing programming, so I had like a female cousin, but so I never knew about these biases until practically, studying it, and then in the games industry where it's just daunting, and I don't even know. Back then I didn't know how to handle it because there are so many things or aspects that you would take for granted that is not being thought about at all because it's such a male-dominated industry.
That's true.
So that's pretty much my experience, for better or for worse, it's been...
Well, that's the thing. I guess it gives you, it's, for better and for worse. I think I understand.
It's an insight into another perspective, but at the same time, you feel... And I guess this is where the whole imposter syndrome is being born. It's like, okay, I don't fit. I'm not even supposed to be here, and that kind of thing. And there you go. It's kind of something that is unconscious or subconsciously fed to you as you study and work.
Absolutely. And it's such a shame to have started out, because it was for me, although I didn't go to university to study games, and I certainly can't program to save my life. Hello World was quite literally the furthest I ever got. In fact, in my lunch break, while I was an administrator at Lionhead, I tried to teach myself how to program. No, just did not go down well. But because I was the firstborn, and my dad's, much like your folks, were really in. My dad was super into video games, and we used to play the Atari together. I was the child there to play. My brother was either not born or too little, so the mantle was passed to me. And I just never considered that it wasn't viewed as a girl's thing at all. All of my friends played video games and they were all dudes, but that I didn't really think, wait, I'm the only one. It's just much like playing Mario. You don't think, oh wait, I'm the princess. You don't think about it. You just kind of crack on with it and play and enjoy it. So I think I felt a similar thing getting into games as an administrator, which is totally, a female-dominated space, and then stepping into this male space and realizing, for the most part, all the other women are admin, or, certainly, once I got into bigger studios, you'd see a lot more artists, a few programmers, a few game designers. But administration teams seem to be the most kind of female heavy space in games, and I mean this was a decade ago, so it's definitely changed, but it has taken a while, that's for sure. So how many women are there on the course that you teach currently? You can estimate.
It's so female students or staff?
Female students,
Okay, that's much faster to answer. So in the degree level, we have currently 2 female students.
Wowzers.
2 whole female students. That's an upgrade from last year.
I was going to say, you're seeing a change year on year, and wow.
We have one in the diploma level as well. And we are accepting many more female students for this year. So we have seen many more applicants. So it's really good. But slowly.
Absolutely.
When it comes to staff, it's actually much more balanced. So we have Lucy, who is head of the academic standard, but she's also specializing in audio, so interactive audio. She's just amazing. We have also Claudia, who's business and design. We have we have Millie as well, and then there's me. So Millie also in audio and design.
And it's so important to have, of course it's important to be bringing female students in, but to have female management, female lecturers who are specialising in game dev as a whole is such an important thing for the students to see. And I imagine it's a case of getting them, getting the students to a point where they're visiting the ACM and they're seeing that, you know, there are people like them teaching, essentially.
Definitely. I mean, you could say like, okay, why don't I just go and become a programmer and work at, you know, a game student? But there's also the whole inspiration kind of component to teaching, where, because I remember during my 3 years, in fact, during my 5 years of studying games, so I have a master's as well and did a postgraduate here as well. So during my 5 years studying games in university, I only had a teacher once for a month. She's amazing. She was just brilliant, and she inspired me. She's actually one of the reasons why I just thought maybe I do belong here. I don't know if she even remembers me. She's now a professor, Annika Wern, if you've ever heard of her. Swedish professor in Uppsala University now. I'm not sure she remembers me because we only had her for a month. And as I said, we were 120 students. So I was just one of the people, but she was really amazing, and she was, you know, just her cute self, nice and, you know, and just brilliant as what she's teaching. She taught us about the design and basically game design and research. So it was a lot about the play and the psychology behind play and so on and so forth. Which I'm teaching now, by the way. So it was like a real inspiration.
That was going to be my next question. You know, what kind of stuff is actually on the course that you teach at the ACM at the moment?
Yeah. So I teach, as I said, so everything from the theoretical part. I teach people the psychology of games, for instance, which is quite heavy. With, I bet. You know, everything from behaviorism and onwards, right? And then there's the cultural aspects of games, the social aspects. And then we have, and that basically means looking at the individual, right? So looking at what happens to us as human beings, how we react to things. But then the social and cultural aspect, which is how games are affecting us as a society, as a culture, globally or regionally, right? And then how the culture is affecting us and the way we make games as well. So it's not just about, you know, game design or game art or programming. It's also about us as human beings and treating games as part of our culture.
I love that.
And then there is the practical aspect. Well, also, by the way, in business, where we teach them, you know, what goes into, for instance, when you're making a business, when you're doing a startup, what are the things you should be thinking about? So, like, who are your target customers, your customer base, and what are your promises to them? You know, when you're making a game, why would they buy it? What do you need? And then you would pitch it in the end for kind of investors. So we have a little dragon's den.
Oh, I love that.
Cool. So think about it from an administrative and business point of view. And then the programming, of course, starting with Unity, and soon we'll start teaching Unreal as well. So Unity with C#, Unreal with C++, and getting them to do everything from, you know, variables and if statements, starting from scratch, so everyone has kind of a common foundation and try to understand each other. Even if you don't want to become a programmer, you at least understand the basics. So you understand what programmers are talking about when you work together with them. And then I'm now planning next year's course for the second years in programming, which is more about a bit more advanced, which is like AI games and trying to understand behavior trees, for instance, neural networks, but then also going more into like cross-platform development and some new technologies.
And I imagine, the new technologies, you're probably having to change every single year. There's something else that you're having to incorporate into your course. Right?
Yeah, we think about them, but we also don't want to make it too, how do you call it? Like, we don't want to make it too fast-paced for students. The most important thing for our students is to get a solid foundation. And new technology comes every single day, but the foundational principles are often the same thing. So that's what we provide them with, and then we try to provide them as well with, of course, there's the industry link so that they don't get disconnected from the industry, and we give them the mindset, or we help them find that mindset to take their own initiative and research and come up with their own solutions, so they come up with new technology in the future.
Awesome. That's so cool. I applaud that, in the sense that, you're absolutely right. There are things that just work. There is a foundation as far as game dev is concerned that has been tried and tested for decades, and even that feels like such a strange thing to say, that games have been around for decades, because they still feel so new almost.
I know. Yeah. True.
To have that kind of solid foundation, to be able to play with the rules that have been set, and then find the kind of the space in between, and go and do something really cool. That's wicked. I love that. The one thing that I have discovered in my very much Guildford focused game dev career is that the wider world still doesn't know that Guildford is this like super incredibly creative hub for video games. So are you finding that this is a realization that your students are getting once they get to you guys at the ACM, or are they coming with that knowledge?
Yeah. A lot of them don't realize that we're basically surrounded by game studios. So that's like a nice surprise that they found out. And, it's still evolving. The Guildford scene is still, has much more to give, right?
Yeah.
So it's looking, they're looking at it very optimistically. We do too. So it's just giving them, once again, that industry link we're trying to build more and more with the Guildford studios, to make sure that once our students graduate, they know what to look for around here.
That's cool. And that's, I suppose that's the big thing that's really changed over the years that games have been in existence. If you ask any of the old guard, if you go to the guys from Bullfrog, or even the old Lionhead team to a certain extent, and say, how did you get into games? The answer will be, well, I just met a guy and he mentioned that he was doing this thing, so I thought I'd go and work there. It's not that world anymore. We need to make sure that we're bringing people up through a game dev education, those that are choosing to go to universities and places like the ACM, etc., to get that education. Of course, there are still other viable ways, but that they're experienced enough to know that they need to stand out. They need to have a solid foundation, an understanding of what they're doing, and be able to really show that passion and excitement for creating, which sounds like you guys are fully instilling in a whole generation. I like it. It's cool.
We're doing our best.
You're getting
it's always
there.
Easy, but we're
it's
doing
never easy. Huda, it's never easy, no matter where you are. But there's so much of it, I suppose, with games that's associated to, of course, the knowledge, the understanding, the skill, but the passion, really caring about video games and understanding that it's an art form as much as anything else, is so important to learn. So really, really cool. Would you say that there are any crossover skills, if we have any young'uns listening to our conversation, who maybe aren't aware that there are courses in game dev that they can do, or aren't aware that potentially careers in game dev? Is there any kind of obvious crossover that people may not consider as being really useful to a career in games?
But there are a lot. So of course there's the research based. A lot of people often oversee that, or they don't think that there is a whole field of research that we need to do within games. So there is, the theory of game design and the psychology, as I said, behind game design and gameplay, and we still don't really know what the fun factor is, like what makes a game really fun. I mean, there is also, there are also all kinds of frameworks for what might make a game fun if you put them together, but that doesn't guarantee you actually that it will be fun. So there's a lot of research to be done, and then also the interactivity, the narrative part. So if you're a storyteller, if you like stories, if you like plots, if you like to solve mysteries, for instance, or if you are a logical person, so if you like mathematics or physics, or if you like these are all things that will help you. And even, for instance, history. A lot of people and I see this a lot in senior designers, for instance, where they draw from their experiences traveling around the world, looking at historical places, visiting places that are not easily accessible, and so on and so forth. And then incorporating that in their games. So these are all the things that you can use within game design or game art and so on. If you, of course, we have the artistic side. If you're a creative person, but yeah, really, so many things can be used within games. The not so obvious things is if you are, for instance, a politician or a humanitarian person, you can also give your message through games. So that is something, for instance, for me, I love education. So the way I look at games, or the way I want to do games, is making games that are educational. But this is where we really need research in how to make educational games actual games, like fun games, right?
To give it that hook,
give it that hook. So because now most games fail in that sense, because they're either highly educational but not so fun, or they're very fun but not so educational. It's just something tangible. So how do we kind of marry these two and make them proper? So I think it was it Jane McGonigal? No, I think it was another researcher who said, okay, we're trying to take a broccoli and then we're trying to take ketchup or chocolate, and we're trying to put ketchup or chocolate on broccoli.
Make them delicious.
Make them delicious. It's not delicious at all. What we need to do is to have something new to eat that is good enough, right? So that is nutritious enough, or that is educational for us in this sense, but it's also very fun and fun to eat or fun to play or whatever. So it's what can we envision that we can actually implement, and this is where pretty much where I am. This is why I really like games, because this is where I see lots of potential in that era, like edtech and educational games.
And definitely something that's not being realised as much as it could be, that there is still that, although we are breaking stigma all the time, and of course video games are, I think even the wider world that doesn't play video games are now starting to understand that they're, just as beautiful as movies, as animated TV shows, as all of these things that we love as mediums. But that there is an opportunity to really tell stories, to really get points across, to really explain something that may not be fully explained, without reading a research paper, for example, and that can be broken down and made, I guess, approachable via video games. Yeah,
because in the end, let's think about it this way. Games is a tool, but it's all about these stories that we're trying to give, and you can do it through different media. But with the games, the amazing thing about games is that they're interactive. So even as a teacher, you will have active learning, for instance, here. So it's very different from other media where you just are passive and you just take in information like books or films and so on and so forth. So there's so much potential that has not been utilized to its full potential here. So it's all about you. I can't really name every single cross kind of
we'd be here
platform.
for all afternoon. I'd be fine with it, FYI, but yes, we would be here all afternoon. You're right. I loved also what you were saying about the diversity of story, diversity of thought. That don't get me wrong, I love Batman as much as the next girl. However, we're seeing a world where stories are just retold over and over and over again. And with video games, we've got a chance to, via indie games, via people with diverse backgrounds getting into AAA and some of the biggest studios that we have in the country in Guildford, that there can be a diversity of story, that we can learn about different cultures, we can learn about different experiences, things that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to interact with, that can completely turn our perspective, on a dime essentially, and tell an entirely different tale, I suppose, for want of a better word. But I think that's so important.
So this week we, for instance, for the degree level, we had the theme ethics in games. So we learned about different ethical frameworks, and it can be really eye-opening and thought-provoking, because what we typically see as, this is the ethical way of doing it, sometimes it's not so apparent or not so obvious for other types of ethical frameworks. So we looked at games from different regions, African games, or when we say Asian, do we really just mean Japanese games here, or even Arabic games, for instance, compared to, for instance, European games or American games? And just looking at perspectives of, different games and different stories that tell different stories, and see, okay, but hold on, they have different kind of frameworks or ethical dilemmas that are being raised. This creates more empathy and a wider perspective on what's out there.
Yeah.
And this also creates better characters once we go out there and create more. We create our own stories or make different games, that we create more believable characters and more believable worlds or universes, I guess.
Yeah.
So it has that depth of thinking about it. It's not just taking everything as face value.
And just on a kind of base level, as women, I'm sure we've both seen enough female characters that are not fully realised, that don't feel realistic, that don't, that are very much there for a reason that isn't the reason that we'd like them to be there. Being able to build on that, as a much wider thing, and look at cultural impact and how we can tell those stories is so important. I love that. Very cool. Okay, Huda, I could quite honestly talk to you all day, but I'm going to try and just ask 2 more questions. Let's see how I go. Fingers crossed. So if there were any particular bits of advice that you would give to female game dev, female students looking into game dev, what would that be?
Oh gosh. There is this female specific, and then there is the general.
Let's do them both.
So in general, I think we are, someone put it really beautifully, we are brought up to have this fear of failure, I think, to be very cautious. And I think that, use your time in university, you're in a safe spot, so use your time to almost be reckless in trying out ideas, all right?
I love that.
Don't be afraid of failure. In fact, fail, because it's not really failure, it's a learning experience. It's all about learning experience. You're not failing anything, right? So make use of that. Just do all kinds of things. And then once you graduate, you actually can say, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. This is what I like to do. If you don't do that, if you're just trying to go for a good grade, then you haven't really explored your own potential. You have just made a checklist of what you need to do to graduate. Right? So explore yourself, explore your ideas, make crazy games, make games that nobody would buy, but, would love to try out. So that's totally fine. This is how we kind of take out this creativity within us. And the other thing is, it goes along with it. We like things to be perfect. Do something not perfect, put it out there, and then laugh at yourself for how much you're shivering because it's not perfect. You'll get over it at some point. Trust me, I still shiver sometimes.
Hey, I get that just from looking at old Facebook posts that I used to put up. So I completely understand. Understand.
See? But we survive those, don't we? So
And what does it give us? It gives us experience. It gives us another, kind of route to bring into the next thing that we go and do. And whether that's learning or whether that's being able to see something from a different perspective, or, to have a kind of less of a fear of failure. I think, all of those things are incredibly valuable. It's something that the game industry as a whole taught me, which is fail quickly and fail often. Just get it done. If you're going to fail. That's cool. Learn from it. Move on to the next thing. Yeah. I think what we do is we come in with this idea that I'm going to do the next big thing, and here's basically my baby game or my baby idea, and I cannot take seeing it fail, right? If it means that much to you, put it aside. Do all kinds of crazy ideas then, all right? Yeah. Don't do that. Do that when you're ready. That's fine. But go and do everything else. Agreed. I'm 100% on that course. That sounds good to me. And the last question that I do tend to ask everyone that I've interviewed for the Guildford.Games Fest and various other Guildford-related things.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favourite Guildford game? If you could nail down just one, of course.
I can't.
There's too many, right? Understandable.
There's so much talent here. I wouldn't be able to choose, to be honest. I would say, on the risk of sounding very promotional here, I would say everyone come down to Guildford and try the games for yourself.
It's a good shout, and we will do everything we can via the Guildford.Games Fest to keep highlighting those amazing developers and make sure that their triumphs are being shared on our Twitter account as well. I'm so lucky that I get to do this for a day job. Just get to shout about how great other people are at their jobs. Brilliant, I love it. Huda, thank you so much for all of your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.